Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to LeTip Live. LeTip is an organization of like-minded individuals brought together to help these businesses grow and flourish. And today we have a special treat for you. Today we're going to be talking about how to make your commercial better. So every day we go around the room and we get to know what we do as businesses and how can we help each other. So today we're going to help you when you're speaking in front of a group and your group and networking to perfect your 30-second commercial. And today we're here with Armando. Just kidding. Armando's virtual. We always like to joke around with you guys. So Armando is actually across the country. He's with the St. Gabriel Valley chapter, and he's with Super Mortgage Bros. So Armando, welcome to LeTip Live.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. So we got a lot of good stuff to get into, but before we do, let's get to know you a little bit. So Armando, tell us about what do you do and what are you up to?
Yeah, so I work in residential mortgages. That's my actual category. So I help people make the most of their real estate dollars. And I've been part of groups like LeTip about 15 years, but I found LeTip maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I've helped start 3 different chapters, and now I'm a membership chair for my chapter currently.
Nice. Awesome. So how did you find LeTip? Where did you get started with LeTip? How did you learn about it? How did you join?
I was just looking for networking groups, and there were other groups that I was familiar with. I wasn't entirely familiar with LeTip, but I did a Google search, and a gentleman called me back that's no longer with the company, and he helped me start the first chapter, and then we started a second one, and then a third one. So
wow.
Yeah.
You're starting chapters, man. You're a rock star. Awesome. Great stuff. So there's one thing that I ask everybody who comes on LeTip Live, and that is what LeTip means to them. So what does LeTip mean to you?
For me, it's the relationships. It's the ability to refer people more so than the referrals for me personally, because I like to train my database to call me no matter what they need. Mm-hmm. And the reasoning behind that is if they call me when they need a plumber or a life insurance agent or an insurance agent, and they're going to call me when they need a mortgage, right? So I try to, from the very beginning, let everyone that I meet know that I have a list of professionals that I can refer to them if they need anything. And sometimes we don't have any in our group, but that's where LeTip Wired kind of helps, right? Because you can find people. And I've had people from the other side of the country reach out to me through Wired for a referral. So if you don't have your Wired profile set up, I advise that you do.
Yes, huge thing you got to set up. Make sure you have a profile picture. Make sure your phone number is correct. Make sure your website's correct. Make sure all your bio is good. You got to have LeTip Wired, because you don't know, if you don't have it set up right, you could be missing out from business all over the nation. Someone, in LA could be sending someone to New York, and they're like, they need an electrician or something, and they look up at your chapter and your stuff's not right. You could be missing out on business. As always, we are live. So if you at home have a question, comment, or concern, you can put it in the comments section and we can answer it live today with Armando. So, ladies and gentlemen, the reason we are here is to improve our 30-second commercials. And Armando is a pro. And if you haven't checked out our Instagram, we had a nice little post of him giving tips and tricks. That's why we're here today, to dive in deeper. So, Armando, how do we get our commercials to be better?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest part that people miss in groups like this is that 30-second commercial is really your chance to shine, right? Unless you're giving a keynote that day. And I always think, imagine these guys that pay $5-6 million for the Super Bowl commercial. If the commercial aired and they said, "Oh, if you like any beer, or someone who likes beer, please, I'm the beer guy," but they don't. They always come up with some clever way to, make us laugh or inspire us or tell a story in 30 seconds. So, and I think that's the biggest thing people miss when they join a group like this, or even when they visit a group like this, right? So I started trying to write social media scripts, and I started to research what works in social media, and I realized that there's some things that we do with the short form content that we can mimic in our 30-second commercial. That's kind of where this idea came from. So as I started to learn that, I started to implement it in my 30-second commercial, and I started to see how the response was from the guest. And then I started to do that at chamber events or anytime I met people, and it just worked out. So I thought I'd share it with the group, and that's how we got here.
Absolutely. Awesome. And we live in a social media society, so our brains are just constantly on here. So if you can mimic those things 100%, that's what we do here at Undefeated Media. We help people with their social media. So I'm sure you got plenty of great stuff that mimics it. So take it away. I mean, I don't like, where do you want to start with?
Well, I guess
I already
the
know.
first.
Where do you want to start with?
Say that one more time.
I said I already know what you're gonna say. So where do you tell the people? Where do we start?
So, well, the way I think of it is when you're going to give your 30-second commercial, most people are super nervous, right? You're waiting for that bucket to come around. You might hear the bell ring a couple times, but a lot of times, and I found myself doing this, I was so focused on what I was going to say that I wasn't present in listening to what others were saying, right? So I figured if it happens to me, it happens to everyone else. So when I'm speaking, no one's listening, right? So we have to find a way to engage, to get their attention. And just like we do in social media scripts, we try to write what we call a hook, so that the first 3 to 5 seconds, there's something that stands out so that people stop scrolling and keep watching. And at the same time, you have to keep it engaged with, with the rest of it. So one thing that we all say when we introduce ourselves is, "Hi, my name's Armando Novelo, and I'm a mortgage loan officer." But the reality is, by the time that sentence is done, many people will be checked out and they're back to thinking about what they're going to say. So if we come up with something strong quickly, the first 3 to 5 seconds, the chances of them listening to you the rest of the way are higher. And if we all do that, then we're more focused on listening to people than thinking about ourselves. But I think another thing that is important is try to have your 30-second commercial ready, or at least an outline before you arrive at the meeting, so that that's not an issue. So from the hook, one of the things that I would say, like for an insurance agent, there's a lot of opportunity for insurance agents, especially with what's going on now. A really good hook for a life, or not a life agent, but for a personal lines agent, I would say something like the cost of building has doubled in the past 5 years. If you have insurance, you might be underinsured, right? Or maybe something like, "Hey, imagine your house burned down and the insurance company didn't pay enough for you to rebuild. That's exactly what happened to one of my clients." And then you tell a quick story, but you got to give the context, right? The cost of building has doubled. So if you haven't changed your insurance in a year or 2 or 3, you may not be adequately covered. So I think things like that are more likely to stay with the person listening than what we normally do, right? So I would do something like that for the hook. Then I would do in the middle of it, explain why, right? So the hook can be, what if your house burned down and the insurance company told you that you're not insured to where they can pay it off? That's exactly what happened to one of my clients. So I'm going to give the meat now, right? That's exactly what happened to one of my clients. He was underinsured, his house burned down, the insurance paid off the mortgage, but now he has an empty lot. And that really happened, right? And I would end it then with the call to action, right? Most people don't know that they should check their insurance, right? So, and then I would ask for a referral to someone who's looking for insurance, or who would like to review it, or who hasn't checked it in a long time. And
I don't want, like, we don't want to like rush through this. Like, you guys got to understand, like, people are checking out if you don't cook them within the 3 to 5 seconds. Armando, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, that's the most crucial 3 to 5 seconds, because if you don't hook them, they're tuning you out. And it's just like in social media. If they're scrolling through and you don't hook them in that 3 to 5 seconds, they're scrolling to the next post. They're checking out to the next thing. So you definitely want to hook them. Then the meat and potatoes. So any tips for the meat and potatoes?
Yeah, I think one of the things for me that happens is I want to say too many words, right? And that's when you see, like, you run out of time, the bell gets rung. So it took me a little bit, and I still struggle. I have to condense my stuff a lot, but it took me a little while to learn to condense the words down to keep it within that time frame. So one thing that worked out for me is I would write 3 or 5 scripts. I would read them while I was timing myself, and then see what words I can remove. So practice, I think, is important. And I mean, if you're in LeTip, you're paying to come to the meeting, you're paying the annual dues. So if you just take 5 to 10 minutes before the meeting to kind of practice your commercial, it's going to be more beneficial than if you just show up and do what I used to do, right? And try to come up with something on the fly.
Yeah, and then you're sitting there going, yeah, you know what I mean? If you practice it, you're gonna be ready to rock, and then maybe even have more time left over rather than being interrupted by the bell. I do want to remind everybody we are live. So if you have a question, comment, concern, please put in the comment section. We can answer it live with you today on the Tip Live. What else we got, Armando?
Well, I would say no matter what you do, try to give something that is impactful, where you're going to teach a lesson, or even educational, right? We had a personalized insurance guy that would always give really cool stories about his clients who either made a mistake or had a car accident. So anything that you can do that will teach someone. I think one thing that a lot of people do when they give their commercial is they say, I'm looking for anybody, somebody, and that's very vague. So I try to break it down so that I'm asking for a specific person, right? So if I'm asking me in my business for someone who wants to buy a home, I can say, please refer anyone who wants to buy a house, or right? But that's so vague. But if I narrow it down a little bit and say, hey, this week I'm looking for people that their homes are too small, they've outgrown them, maybe they're having a family, maybe they're getting married and would like to buy a house, right? Because now you're going to get it narrow to where people start to think of individuals rather than just as general of anyone who wants to buy a house. Right? So I would make it impactful in the beginning, specific in the middle, and then when your call to action should be specific so that they get their wheels spinning as to who they can refer you to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Sometimes if we just like, yeah, if someone's looking for a house, like I'm gonna call it too broad, might just like not even think about it, but like someone's house burnt down. If they need a house, like if anyone's house burnt down, I'll be happy to help them find a new house. They might, oh my God, like my cousin had a fire, and maybe I should link them up. You know what I mean? You're putting something tangible or an idea in people's heads. You're planting the seeds, if you will.
Correct.
Yeah, it's great stuff. You want to help them every step of the way. If you're too general, too broad, it's in one ear out the other. It's too bland. You know what I
Right.
mean? But if you give them certain situations, you give them examples, you may connect the dots.
And we call them our sales force, right? So if you hired 10 salespeople and they all came into your conference room and you said, hey, it's your first day at work, you're going to go out and find anybody who wants to buy a house, right? That probably wouldn't work out very well after 30 days.
Yep.
So I think as specific as possible and as few words as possible, and have something that's impactful. I try to always do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you definitely want to practice it. You want to be prepared. And I would also think, correct me if I'm wrong, you might want to have a couple of these in your back pocket. So, it's not, we want you want to rehearse it, you want to practice it, but maybe have like 4 or 5. So you're just cycling through these, and like, you're not losing people because they've heard the same thing over and over again. You want to change these stories up. Maybe you change them up every week and you practice the night before. There's no shame in practicing and getting prepared for the next day. So yeah.
Right.
Great
The
stuff.
biggest LeBron James practices every day, man, and he's one of the best, right?
Yep. You got to practice. Absolutely. Want to remind you guys again, we are live. So anytime you have a question, please put it in here. Any other tips, tricks, or anything else that have to do with the commercial?
Well, I think the commercial, again, it's always remember it's why you're there, unless you're doing a keynote, right? It's why you're there. And I see often, not just in my group, but in other groups that I visited, I've seen often where people they kind of waste the commercial, where sometimes it's like a quick 5-second. And I think it should always be prepared, even on the day of your keynote. If you have a commercial that kind of follows the keynote, it's going to be more impactful than, saying, well, you already heard what I do today on the keynote, so, here's a bucket. I don't waste a commercial. Every commercial is an opportunity. Sure. And again, the marketing world, you would never waste a Super Bowl ad or any sort of commercial. They're always going to be good. But I think
even in the Super Bowl, sorry to interrupt you, even in like the Super Bowl, those companies that do multiple spots, like the first one might be the long story, and then like the second one's like a condensed version, but it's like to bring it home, like, to remind you the main point, the main call of action. So when you do your presentation and that bucket comes around, like, remember I told you I'm looking for people whose houses have burned down, and we're here to help you.
Correct. Yeah. And to your point too of having those pre-written commercials, it comes in super handy because you might walk into an event one day and you have an opportunity to introduce yourself and you already have it, right? So it can even be outside of LeTip if the members are going to a chamber or some sort of other mixer. And, you know, I've had that before at a chamber where I'm there and I think I'm going to network, and then they say, okay, well, everyone's going to introduce themselves, and I happen to be the first one because I'm in close proximity to the person in charge. So having those always in your back pocket will make you stand out when you go to groups like that. And the more polished they are, the better. So I would say break it down as much as you can. Break it down into the 3 parts, 10 seconds each, and go for it. And if anyone wants to practice one or send me a sample or even talk about it, I'm happy to jump on a Zoom or a phone call.
Absolutely. And let me put this up here. So if you are looking to contact Armando or pick his brain, there's his Instagram right there. So at Armando _Novelo _. So definitely check him out and definitely, look him up. And you guys, we all should be helping each other, following each other, liking each other's posts. That's what we're all here for, to help each other grow. But yeah, 100%. And people speak and their mind works in stories. So if you kind of like work this hook and the meat and potatoes and this call to action to one nice, elegant story, it's just going to help tenfold. Any other tips or tricks?
I think the keynote too, right? The keynote is the most important thing. So I try to have a structure on every keynote that I do that I've started to share with the team. But I try to break that into 3 parts too. I try to break it into, the first part is about me, where I add some personal stuff, because people like to work with those they know, like, and trust. So I always try to share about my family, some things that I do personally, hobbies. Then I go to the next phase, which is what sets me apart, right? The things that we do, the people that we've been able to help. And I like telling stories about our clients, people that couldn't buy a house and we gave them a plan and then they bought a house, or whatever the case may be. And then the last part of it, kind of the same thing, it should be your call to action. It's just a little bit longer. But if you use that structure, you can use the 7 to 10 minutes in a way where it'll be more impactful. And I think sometimes, and I've done what I used to do before is I didn't have a structure for it, and having that structure with the presentation just makes you look so much better than, I was the guy that would say, I don't need a presentation. I know my business. I'm just going to stand up there and talk. But then you lose a lot in that, right? Because there's no structure, and maybe you forget something or you add something that shouldn't have been there. So I think having a nice structured presentation is what makes you stand out. And I know we're not supposed to do this, but everyone is judging us at all times, right? If you come to the meeting and you're not prepared, or your 30-second commercial is not prepared, or you don't show up to the meeting at all when it's your turn to speak, people may not say it, but I promise you they're thinking in their heads, Armando didn't show up. What will happen if I refer a client to him? Is he going to not show up or be late or forget or not be prepared? So we want the visibility aspect of it, even good or bad, you're visible, right? If you're not there, you're visible, and it's obvious that you're not there. People will not refer to you. And if you're there and you're not present, if you're on your phone or stepping out, then people notice that you're doing those things. So just being present in the group and showing that you're there to give, I think is what's going to help people be successful, if you will.
Absolutely. We do have a question. So we have a question here from Connor. Connor says, hey, Armando, thanks for the tips. What is the best way to practice your commercial? In the mirror, or should I record myself? What do you suggest? So
I record myself on my cell phone, just selfie style. It does 2 things. It helps me see, the pauses, the ums and things like that. And then also it helps me time that commercial, so I don't go to 45 seconds or 60 seconds. But one of the best things that you can do is maybe write a bunch of hooks and have those prepared, because you'll find that if you have a good hook, even if you don't have the meat and potatoes, most of the time you can kind of play off of it because you know your industry well, right? So that's what I would do. I practice on my cell phone. I've never practiced in front of the mirror because the cell phone's recording it. And sometimes I'll watch it, because what you'll find is that if you watch it, you might like the tonality that you used, or you might not like the tonality. You might want to emphasize a different word. So watching that, you get to listen to how it sounds without, it's different when you watch it than when you're listening to yourself speaking, if you will.
Yeah, you might not be able to pick it up in the bathroom. Like you might be you can't really hear yourself when you're talking, but if you record yourself, you can really dissect what you're saying and how your tonality is, and taking breaths and adding dramatic pauses.
Yeah, that's what's worked for me. I hope that answers this question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Want to remind you guys, we are live. So if you have any more questions, please put them in the comments section. We'll answer them live. And today we're talking about tips and tricks to perfecting your commercial. So definitely put the questions in the comment sections as soon as possible, as we're pretty much getting through the steak and potatoes here of our teaching and training and tips and tricks. So don't hesitate to put a question in there. Any other thing? I'm not like, we've covered a lot. I think we got most of it, but anything else? I don't want to miss anything. Anything else that we have for the tips and tricks?
I mean, that's just my process on the commercials. And again, if anyone wants to send one to me, or, find me on Instagram, and I'll be happy to give you some ideas or share what I do, or maybe send you some of mine. I've taken some of my 30-second commercials and repurposed them for social media content. Right. And then I've taken some of my social media scripts and repurposed them for 30-second commercials. So, you can use it everywhere once you have it set up, if you want to grow.
Absolutely. And that's what we do in my chapter. When, one of my clients is doing their, keynote, we try to take pictures and video them, because, like, why not kill two birds with one stone? They're in a room of, X amount of people, being a professional and giving their expertise out. Why not get that content? Like, you always got to be smart and get content wherever you can, right? It's a social media driven world, and you got to get content where you can. So definitely, try to kill two birds with one stone there. While we have you here, no pressure. These questions aren't crazy. There aren't, anything crazy. So let's, like, if you're a newer member, since you started like 4 chapters, if we have a newer member out there who maybe just joined LeTip, any tips or tricks or anything you could suggest for a newer member to do to better equate themselves with LeTip, or get a nice head start?
Yeah. So I always like to think that the meeting itself is really just a show for the member, for the guest, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really, where the magic happens is in the meetings with the group outside of the actual LeTip meeting. So I would encourage a brand new member to meet with everyone outside of the group in a one-on-one, understand what they're looking for. But one question that I always ask when I meet with someone for a one-to-one is, who is your biggest referral source? Because if I'm meeting with a CPA and the CPA tells me that their biggest referral source is a payroll guy, I might know 1 or 2 payroll guys and I can introduce them. And if you're brand new in the group, the best thing you can do is try to connect each member with someone. Even if it's not someone who's going to buy today, it's who is your referral source. And I try to think that way, right? If I have a general contractor and he says that his best referral source is an insurance adjuster, then I want to find 2 or 3 insurance adjusters and connect them with that contractor, right? And I feel like if someone new came to me and said, hey, you said your best referral source is a real estate agent. My mother is a real estate agent, and I want you to call her and introduce yourself, or, connect with her. I may not close a transaction there, or I may not have, closed business, but what I do have is an opportunity to meet with someone who can give me a lot of business. So that would be the first thing that I would do if I was a new member in a group that I don't know, is figure out who their connectors are. Every group has them, right? Maybe 20% of the members give 80% of the business. So I would try to find who the connectors are in the group. I would try to find who their best referral source is. And then I would look at my Rolodex and see, I would look at my database and see, it tells you how old I am. I would look at my database and see who in that database is in the same category that, even if they're not in LeTip, I may be able to refer them. And I'll tell you, I landed a really nice account with a CPA with just that example. Who's your best referral source? And she said, a payroll guy gives me a lot of business. So I happen to know 2 payroll guys that I introduced her to. Now, really cool thing is the payroll guys also get business from the CPA. So you're really just helping 2 people connect. You know what I'm saying? And my thought is, if I can help them connect before I ask for anything, they may want to refer to me, right? And they might look for ways, and maybe not, but when someone helps me, I always want to figure out a way to help them in return. So I try to approach people that way. The first thing I want to do is give value before I ask for anything back.
True. Absolutely. And that's why we do this, LeTip Live. Our whole goal here today is to provide as much value as we can to our members. And, hopefully they share this video and someone learns about LeTip who doesn't know about LeTip. And it's all about giving value. 100%. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
How about so that was the rookie LeTip member. How about someone who's maybe struggling a little down and out? Any, words of advice to get someone back invigorated with LeTip?
Yeah, I think if we're not getting business, it's probably because we don't have the relationships built, right? Because people want to help you when they like you. So I would say if you're someone who is not getting business from LeTip, or there's two things you can do. You can invite people. So what I like to do is we meet on Friday. So Thursdays this afternoon from 4 to 5, there's an hour that's blocked out. And I go through my database and see who is a business owner that I can either send a text message to, or an email, or even a phone call to invite them to the group. And what that does is it gives me the ability to stay in front of that person, even if they don't come to the group. Right now, I'm top of mind for them, and I'm giving them something of value. Right. So I try to do that. It helps grow the group, but it also helps me stay in front of people. And then the second thing that I would do is I would meet with everyone in the LeTip group, either at a lunch bunch or one-to-one, I prefer, and just ask those questions. How's the group going for you? What are the things that we can do to get you more business? And really, I try to make it about them, because if it's about them, again, if I help them, they'll want to help me in return. And, that's the law of reciprocity, right?
Absolutely. 100%. Great stuff. I don't want to leave any stone unturned. So anything on top of mind that you like to share? Do you have anything coming up that you want to share with the viewers? Like, what's going on? Anything? I just don't want to leave any stone unturned.
I don't have anything going on. Our group, we're going, and my goal is to grow the group this year. I'm the membership chair. So I'd like to double the number of members by the end of the year.
Awesome.
So if you're in the San Gabriel Valley area and you want to come check out the group, give me a call.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also find Armando right there on his Instagram page at the bottom of your screen, Armando_Novelo_. Great stuff. Armando, any questions, comments, concerns you have for me before we go?
No, man, I think this is great. I hope we were able to give the audience value and some ideas that maybe changes their thinking a little bit.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. And like I said, guys, you can, put a question in the comment section. We can revisit it. You can reach out to Armando. Again, his Instagram handle's up on the screen. This has been great. So much awesome value. Armando, thank you so much for your time and so much for helping our members and helping LeTip grow. He's a rock star. He started like 4 chapters on his own. He's the man. So Armando, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for watching. And we'll see. Oh, we got one last question. We'll put it up. We got one last question. Love your content. If you give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
That's kind of general. There's actually a video on my Instagram, 3 things I wish I knew in my 20s, if you want to watch that. Piece of advice that younger would be build those relationships, because I think it's the most important thing. And when you're young, you miss that, right? And build them long-term, go deep. We're very superficial in the world today, where we don't really get to know people. It's very much just very superficial, like I said. So that's what I would do. And outside of LeTip, I would give myself the advice, if I were younger, to invest my money wisely rather than buying pretty things.
Awesome. Great stuff. And now, of course, all the questions come in. This is the last one, guys. Hey, Armando, love your stuff on IG. As a new LeTip member, any advice for the new guy to better grow the group or be able to network better? Thanks again, Armando. And that's from Vega.
Yeah. I would say brand new, I would talk to as many people as possible. And everyone that you meet, ask what you do, ask what they do, ask them. Or even think of who you give money to, right? Anytime you go somewhere and you pay someone, whether it's the guy that changes your tires or the guy that cuts your hair, those are all potential members. So if you think of everyone that way, and if it's not them as a potential member, is who do they know that can be a member? If assuming that you're trying to grow the group, right? That's what I would focus on, is as many people as possible to bring them in. I go to chambers and poach people. I hope nobody from the chamber sees this, but I go to the chamber And I collect cards because everyone's there to network. And everyone I meet, I send a thank you card, a handwritten thank you card that I write myself. Thank you for meeting me. I'm kind of nervous when I go to new events, but you were great, you know. And I send the card, and then 2 or 3 days after I send the card, I follow it up with a phone call and try to get them to come to the group. And I would say something like, hey, you know, I was kind of nervous when I got there, but you were really cool, and I felt much better when I started to talk with you. And I'm part of this group that is a networking group. Would you be interested in hearing more about it? And I just try to get them to the group. I don't really try to answer any questions about what it is or anything. My goal is just come to the group. If you like it, we'll give you all the info. If you don't like it, you just get to hang out with me for an hour and a half. You know, and yeah, that's what I would do as a new guy.
You get a free breakfast. And you get a free
Right?
breakfast. Great stuff. Last chance. Looks like we got through all the questions. So thank you again, Armando. We appreciate you coming here, giving us your time and helping us grow and helping us provide valuable information to our LeTip family. So thanks again, Armando.
Yeah, man, let's get these members some dollars in their pockets, right?
Absolutely. Dollars in the pockets. What we're all about here. So thank you guys for watching LeTip Live, and we'll see you next time on LeTip Live.